is blessed. And see, the thing of it is, the Gentiles, they're going to see. They're going to see when Israel is fully restored. And many of them, Israel is going to come to Yeshua. They're going to finally recognize that Jesus, who we call Jesus Christ, is Yeshua. And they're going to recognize that. And we're going to see him be blessed. We're going to see him. They're going to be the fullness of Israel. And the Gentiles will see it and will be blessed because of what God has done to them. Now this figure here, you take a parent who wants his children to be esteemed. They want them distinguished. They want them to be successful. And they're so successful that their fame extends to distant lands. Well, the time is going to come when the true friends of the Redeemer will be universally honored, regarded as favored of the Lord instead of being persecuted and despised. The nations of earth will regard them as worthy of their confidence and esteem. Now see, we may have seen some of that in the past, but it ain't going to happen. We're not in that time. But you get into the millennial reign of Christ, and things will change. Total different. Now this is Romans 11:16. And it's kind of big, but I put it in here. And remember this, Romans chapter 11. Because I can't go through this, word for word. I can read it. But this is a description in Romans that Paul wrote talking about the Jews. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. So not just part of it, they're all holy. And if some of the branches were broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partook of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. Now see, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. You will say, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. He's talking about the Jews. And thou standest by faith, be not high-minded, but fear. See? Because we are the wild branches that were grafted in. The Jews, they go clear back to Moses, and they, the only people that actually saw the Lord on the mountain, his glory, and the fire. What have the Gentiles seen? They haven't seen nothing. They're sinners. They're crude. They're rude, man. They're Gentiles. That's why even today you'll find some of the Jewish scholars and leaders, they won't shake hands with the Gentile because they're unclean. It's rather funny, but they really do, But see, Paul says, well, these wild branches God is going to save and graft them in through Christ. They're grafted in, the wild ones. All of a sudden they become tame. All of a sudden they're full of love. All of a sudden, through Christ, the Redeemer, they've got this faith now. And they read Isaiah and they love it. And they love the Jews and they're changed. What happened to them? Well, Christ happened to them. And see, in verse 20 then, he talks of the Jews. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. And he says to the Gentiles, and thou standest by faith. And that's what the Gentiles do. We are saved by grace through faith. And he says, be not high-minded, but fear. We're not better than the Jews because we stand by faith. But we need to fear. And he says, for if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell. Severity, but toward thee goodness. In other words, while the Jews fell and went into judgment, the Gentiles were taken care of by God. And of course, Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles, and he's telling the Gentiles here not to mock the Jews, not to hate the Jews, or anything like that. Understand that God will graft them in. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? In other words, they're restored and brought back in. And they're going to find the Messiah. They're going to know the Messiah, and a lot of them already have. And let me see where we're at. Yeah, we're doing good. Acts chapter 3, 22 through 26. For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren like unto me, and him shall ye hear all things whatsoever he shall say unto you. And it shall come to pass that every soul which will not hear that prophet shall be destroyed from among the people. And that's true, and that prophet is Yeshua. Matter of fact, when the Gospels record, this particular thing, it gives hint to that. So we can find that in the Gospels. The Lord discussed it. And it shall come to, yea, and all the prophets from Samuel and those that follow after, as many as have spoken, have likewise foretold of these days. This is the coming of the Messiah. He's talking about the King. You are the children of the prophets and of the covenant which God made with our fathers. Now this is in Acts, and this is when they were talking to the Jews there in Jerusalem on this day. And you are the children of the prophets of the covenant which God made with our fathers, saying unto Abraham, in thy seed shall all the kindreds of the earth be blessed. Now that's made available through Christ and through the Gentiles who are grafted in through Christ into the family of God. We are related to our father Abraham because he was justified by faith. For he believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness' sake. Likewise, as Gentiles, we believe God, and it is imputed unto us for righteousness' sake because we have received his Son. And unto you first God, having raised up his Son Jesus, sent him to bless you, and turning away every one of you from his iniquities. See, unto you first God. See, now that gets back to what we were talking about. Paul was writing in Romans. The Jews, they were ungrafted. The Gentiles were grafted in. So these are two really good scriptures that tells how this whole thing works. Verse 10, I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God, for he has clothed me with the garments of salvation, covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decked himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with her jewels. And here, the language of the prophet in the name of the church. The Chaldee regards this as the language of Jerusalem. And the Chaldee says, Jerusalem said, I will surely rejoice in the Lord. And so this idea here is that the prosperity and enlargement of Zion, because Zion is enlarging, is an occasion of joy and should lead to thanksgiving and praise. And so when it says, I will rejoice in the Lord, up there, I will greatly rejoice in the Lord, it means that the joy would arise from the view of the faithfulness and the perfection of Yahweh that was manifested by the redemption of his people. And of course you can find, they recommend the Song of Mary, and this is what Mary said in Luke 1, regarding the birth of Christ and her being chosen. And Mary said, my soul does magnify the Lord, my spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior, for he has regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. And that's just the first 3 words of that. But it's 10 verses in there, and it gives you the look here that God was working all along as Israel was doing her things. He was dealing with Israel. Of course, this came later when the Messiah was finally come. So this is, if anything, it should make you understand that Jesus Christ coming, or Yeshua as we call him, is not a mistake. And, all these people, especially the Muslims, who say that Isa, they call him Isa instead of Jesus or Yeshua, they say, well, he's a prophet. Well, he's called a prophet and teacher and a lot of things, but he's the Son of God. And unless you get the Son of God right, you're not going to understand what the redemption is. Because he is the Son of God who died on the cross, providing atonement, because his blood, he was perfect. And only a perfect sacrifice could make atonement for all the sins of man. Now that is exactly why Yeshua had to come. And he didn't come just to save a bunch of dirty, rotten Gentiles. He came to save everyone who would believe. Jew, Gentile, male, female, etc., etc. And see, this is the truth, and this is why the devil hates this message. This is why the devil will do anything to get people blinded and off track. Now in Revelation 19, 7 through 8, we were previously discussing how the Jews and in Jerusalem, God restoring them, and there's going to be a lot of joy. We've gone through that, the celebrations. This is celebrating the restoral and the finality of everything God has ready for the Jews. But Revelation 19 is to the church. Let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him. For the marriage of the Lamb is come. The Lamb is Yeshua, Jesus Christ, and his wife, that is the church, the blood-bought, saved, born-again believers, has made herself ready. And to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for fine linen is the righteousness of saints. So we're going to be in white. And if you go to Revelation 21, 2 through 4, and I, John,